Welcome to the Gold Standard here from the 440 Sports Network. My name is Braden Gall, and hockey is almost here. You can follow me on the internet at Braden Gall.
And I'm Emma Lingan, and you can follow me on the internet at Emma_Lingan.
And I'm Michael Gallagher. You can also follow me on the internet at MGSports_.
Oh, the content gods. We do appreciate the Predators giving us like a different story every week all summer long. It's been quite nice. Well done, Barry Trotz.
I want to take some credit for that because I was out of town and then all hell broke loose. So you guys are welcome.
That's also true. How was your vacation, by the way, Mike? How were you?
It was great. I probably can't tell because my webcam's not the greatest, but my face is a lot more tan. Spent a lot of days on the beach just listening to music, listening to the ocean waves, drinking some fruity drinks with my wife, and it was a lot of fun.
There you have it. More to explore says, glad Michael is back from vacation, air quotes. I'm not sure what that means. Miss the trademark charm. That is correct.
Yes, I know. I had a lot of people tweeting at me, go enjoy vacation, but I can't help it. My brain is wired to be constantly checking Twitter. So when I saw all this stuff was happening, like I had to chime in. I'm not good at vacationing, if you can't tell.
Well, that's just something we all need to work on. Everybody needs to go outside and touch grass. Lots of stuff to discuss because the Predators have traded the top goalie prospect maybe in the world, Yaroslav Askarov, to the San Jose Sharks following, 16 months of trying to trade Yaroslav Askarov to another team. They chose Juuse Saros. They chose to contend for a Stanley Cup. We will get into that strategy because it's very clear what Barry Trotz's strategy is. I'm not sure in the moment right now you can fault him for that strategy. It doesn't mean in 3 or 4 years we won't have a different conversation, which, again, we will discuss. What did they get back in return from the San Jose Sharks? What does that mean for the Nashville Predators farm system? And of course, folks, rookies are reporting in like 12 days, 15 days. Like I think it's September 10th, 2 weeks from now. And they will get, of course, some rookie games going on very, very soon. So training camp is almost here. We will have an announcement next week on the show, maybe more than one, but definitely one. And then we'll have some more announcements after that. So we got lots of stuff planned for you guys. Go sign up. Of course, become a subscriber at lowerbroadhockey.com. That is the website. That is that's where, as Michael said, as the kids are saying, Emma, where the chat was fire at Lower Broad Hockey.
Why was that directed at me?
Well, because you're like the young, cool one, and Michael and I are not. Sorry, Mike. I'm not.
It was a youthful compliment on your part.
Yeah, I was being nice. You're the one. If I had tweeted out, I'm 42 years old with 2 kids. If I had tweeted out anything is fire or lit or anything like that, people are just going to laugh at me. I can't get away with it.
I think I kind of still can.
I'm very mid, no cap.
I think I can kind of still get away with that. I'm 35, but I've been told I look a little bit younger. So I feel like I have like 2 or 3 more years of being able to say stuff like that before I get yelled at for being too old. So
that's fair. What is middle-aged? What officially is middle-aged? Like the average lifespan of an American male is like 72. So is 36 middle-aged? I don't know. I don't know. I feel like a teenager sometimes. So I don't know. There you go. No comments from either of you? Nothing?
No, I mean, if you're going strictly what's the middle of like the average age, it would be younger. But in my mind, I think of middle-aged. I feel like my perception of middle-aged, like it gets higher the older I get because I'm like, I don't want to be close to middle age. Like, I don't know. I think like 50s, but then that would mean that you live to 100. I don't know.
I think much like dad is a vibe. Again, I shouldn't be saying these words. Being a dad is sort of like an energy. Like anybody can put out dad energy. You don't have to even be a dad or a male. I think you can just put out dad energy. If you stand in your yard and look at a car that drives by, I'm stealing this from another reporter, by the way. If you stand in your yard and look at a car driving by and you think to yourself, oh, a little too fast, that's dad energy. Like that, you can do that as like you can be, doesn't matter your sexuality, your gender, doesn't matter. You can put out dad energy. I think you can put out middle-age energy even if you're like 29 or if you're 72. So I just was curious what you guys would consider middle-aged. I feel very middle-aged at 42.
In that case, I, at 30, for sure put out middle-aged energy.
Oh, 100%.
I'm sitting on a heating pad right now because my hip is broken. I'm not actually broken, but it just doesn't work.
Hip. Oh my gosh.
And yet I still have people on the internet sewers telling me that I'm too young to be criticizing Yaroslav Askarov for being part of Gen Z. People, I'm not part of Gen Z.
Yeah, she's not. You're clearly not there. As Mortal Explorer says, age is a mentality. Yes, youth is a number, age is a state of mind. I tend to agree with that. Josh says if you listen to a hockey podcast when it's 100 degrees outside, you need to be in the chat on Lower Broad Hockey. Also agree with that. Yes, it is me, 42-year-old middle-aged dad. It is Michael Gallagher and another middle-aged white man, Emma Lingan, on the show. It's just 3 middle-aged white guys here. Okay. All right. Let's go sign up. Lower Broad Hockey, please, for the love of God. Okay.
What a plug.
Again, announcement coming next week on the Gold Standard. So we'll have an announcement next week, and then we'll have another one maybe next week, maybe the following week. Not quite sure yet, but just stay tuned. Yaroslav Askarov traded. I before we get to the return, I want to hear what your reaction was in the moment. I'm not sure I quite understand, and I don't love the fact that we're going to do like 3 straight episodes, maybe defending Barry Trotz here, but that's not necessarily what I think. I don't understand the reactions to some of the other reports and other stories around this particular story. Like it shouldn't be a surprise that Barry Trotz and Yaroslav Askarov have had conversations about this. It shouldn't be a surprise that said this last week on the show, Emma. Like, shouldn't be surprised that Barry Trotz is trying to move Askarov, that he wants to be moved, that all parties want this to work out. Like, none of this is really all that surprising, frankly, or that newsworthy. It's newsworthy that he went and made it public, and that maybe accelerated the process. But I don't really think that none of this stuff is all that surprising. What was y'all's reaction when you saw the actual trade happen?
I mean, I wasn't surprised. I mean, look, Barry Trotz kind of, I don't know if you want to call it his first official act as GM, but I like to bookmark the 2023 draft as when Barry Trotz officially kind of took over for David Poile. The first thing he did was walk onto the draft floor and be like, all right, Yaroslav Askarov is open for business. Who wants to trade him? Like, that was the first thing he did when he took over as a general manager. So none of this should have been surprising at all. Like, he's been trying to trade him for the better part of a season or a year and a half now. I mean, this is just kind of, look, when they signed Saros to that contract extension in July, that was Barry Trotz saying, we've made our decision. Saros is our goalie. Askarov is a nice piece to have, but I just kind of always get the feeling he didn't fit in. And I think he made the right call. When you're forced to pick between a player you know is good and a player you think might be good, it makes sense to always go with the player you know is good, because it's just such a wild card betting on someone like Askarov, who, and I know you guys talked about this. I wasn't really here to make my point. The whole Barry Trotz hates personality thing blew up on freaking Twitter, and that people misunderstand what I say. And the reason why I've been reporting on this basically since the draft last year is because there was smoke where there was fire. And I'm not saying that Barry Trotz traded Askarov because he hates personality. He hates the headaches that come with the stuff he does on ice, like going out and tackling Texas Stars player in the conference final in the playoffs, stuff like that, where he's coming out of the crease and getting into a fight. And I've talked to several people close to the Predators and with the Admirals too about like what is the disconnect between these two, and it's always been like, I think Emma mentioned last week, kind of joking around, like, oh, it's the Gen Z attitude mentality, and that's kind of really what it is. I was told, not going to leak some of the text messages, but I've gotten, but I was told, like, Barry doesn't play around with that. He wants a team of Roman Josis and Juuse Saroses, where they're going to go out there.
I disagree with that.
Where they're going to go out there, they're going to do their job, and they're going to stay out of the spotlight. Askarov tends to attract the spotlight onto him, whether he means to or not, and that's kind of where I'm not saying that was the only reason, but that did play a factor into it. And Barry Trotz even admitted that on the radio last week. So I feel like this has been brewing for a while. To boil it down to, I guess, one point is that Askarov doesn't fit the mold of the player that Barry Trotz wants on this team. And I think that's why he got traded.
Yeah, I mean, I think kind of as a follow to that, it's been, people like to think of things as very black and white. And it's like, oh, it's only because of his personality that he got traded. No, but I do think that it played a factor for sure, because having spent a lot of time with Barry Trotz, having been on the road with Barry Trotz, just talked to him quite a bit, been around him, Yaroslav Askarov is not the kind of personality that he wants on this team. Barry's all about, he likes team first guys. And Askarov, I'm sorry, while he has many redeeming qualities, he is a me first guy. He's not a team first guy. And I mean, I think the whole trade request, now again, not to rehash all of this, I'm not criticizing him for requesting a trade or for wanting to go somewhere where he has a clearer pathway to the NHL, because I think that makes
and a lot of money.
Yes, and it makes sense for him as a player. I don't fault him for that, but I do fault the way that he went about it, and I think that it speaks to the fact that just the way that everything has panned out. It looks like, I want to go somewhere where I can be the guy, and he was not going to be the guy in Nashville, and Barry Trotz didn't want him to be. So I think that like, it's something that can't really be coached out of someone because that's their personality, and that's fine. But I think he just kind of fits where San Jose is as a franchise right now more than Nashville.
I also think too, part of this that kind of drives home the point of what we both just said is that I think it was the Tennessean had a story that basically said Trotz quietly talked to Askarov about trading him. And then Askarov basically made it known, like, I want to go somewhere else if I'm not going to be the guy here. And Trotz was like, okay, I'm going to look and see what kind of deal I can get for you. And Askarov agreed to basically soldier on and just deal with it until a trade. And then like a couple days later, they put it out there that he was unhappy, he wasn't showing up, and he wanted to be traded. I think that kind of immaturity is exactly why Barry Trotz got rid of him. It was basically a Tyson Barrie situation all over again. Not to the degree it was where that had been brewing for a little bit. This just kind of showed like that's the kind of immaturity that they don't want around the team. Where if you're trying to be a professional hockey player and you're like, okay, I'm gonna deal with this. This isn't great, but I'm gonna trust you that you're gonna make a trade that's in my best interest. And then 2 days later, you're like, nope, not showing up. I want to trade. Get me the hell out of here. That just kind of drives home the point of like, okay, this guy is not a fit for this team.
So I think we're saying some of the same things without being all that contradictory. But I think it is far more specific to Askarov and his personality affecting his production versus Barry Trotz not liking personality. I think that is unfair to paint Barry Trotz as someone who will take a player who is going to help them win and say no because he's a certain personality type. I just don't think that's how he works. I mean,
I agree, and I want to make it clear. I never said Barry Trotz hates personality.
I know, but you guys both kind of just said that Barry Trotz doesn't want those types of players on his team. He doesn't want 24 Roman Josis that are just bland and never say anything. That's not what he doesn't go to work every day saying that's the kind of player I want. I think what happens
I would disagree.
It's specific to Askarov, where that personality leads to him not being there for his team in critical moments. That personality leads to him not being productive or doing immature stuff like you're talking about. He couldn't coach offense, couldn't develop offense, couldn't coach personalities in Nashville until all of a sudden he did, and he won a cup with guys with very big personalities in Washington. So I think we have evidence that says otherwise, that it's not about the personality, it's about the production. And how does the personality tie into that production? And Askarov, and this is where we all agree, and I think most Preds fans should be excited about this, they are trying to win a Stanley Cup. Like they are trying to go win a championship, and Yaroslav Askarov does not give them a better chance to do that over the next 4 years. That's the end of it. I don't think it has anything to do with who he is as a person or Barry Trotz as a person or culture. It's like he doesn't give him a good enough chance to win. Juuse Saros does because he's better right now over the next 4 years. And for now, we don't know what that's going to look like. And Askarov, because of his emotional and mental and psychological development or maturity or place in life, is not there to help them win yet.
Well, does
that make sense?
Both things can be true. Like he can be, Juuse Saros is better right now, and Yaroslav Askarov has the kind of personality that Barry Trotz doesn't want. I think both things are true. That's what I'm saying, is that it's not that only his personality is the reason that he got traded. And I think to your point, Braden, I think that is a very good point to clarify, is that it has to do with how the personality impacts the production. And we talked about this last week about how Askarov is a really passionate, very emotional player. And sometimes that can be a great strength, but other times it can bite him in the ass. And I think that is what was kind of the issue, is that you're not helping your team win when you're going out tackling a guy at center ice. And so I think that, if it was personality alone, then sure, they could work around that, move around that. But again, like they have Juuse Saros, who is better. And then you have the personality issue that is sort of just kind of not doing him any favors. And so I think that it does have to do, I think both things can be true.
I think the last thing I want to say on this is, I think to clarify, again, just because people will take words the wrong way and out of context, I don't think it's the personality of Askarov. It's the selfishness. I think that's a better way to term it, because of the things that he does that's specific to him and shines a spotlight on him and takes it away from the team. That's, I think, the stuff that Barry Trotz had an issue with. And look, when he signed Saros, he committed the next 9 years of this franchise to being with Saros. And he also has a full no trade clause in his next contract. Like, Saros wasn't going anywhere. Askarov had no path to the NHL other than as a backup. And he made it abundantly clear, like, he wants to be a starter. He thinks he's ready to be a starter. His agent's telling him he's ready to be a starter. I think we can all agree he's not ready to be an NHL starter right now. But
certainly not for one of the worst teams in the league. Like, it won't be pretty this year if he's playing a lot of games.
Yeah, he was never going to fit in on this team. He didn't have a role. And you could argue that his trade value was never going to be higher than it is right now, because we saw since the trade request went public, everyone's like, oh, Trotz just lost leverage. Everyone knows he wants out. He can go back to the KHL. There were all these things everyone was talking about, and all that stuff was true. Barry Trotz, I think, did the best with what he could. He maximized the return for a guy that was unhappy. Everyone knew he was unhappy. And also, I think something else we're failing to consider is he inherited Askarov from David Poile. I don't think if Barry Trotz was a GM a couple years ago that they would have used the 11th overall pick on a goaltender when you had a Vezina caliber goaltender already. So I think I think it's also kind of necessary. And I'm not trying to shit on David Poile here, but I think we're seeing Barry Trotz kind of cut some of the dead weight that David Poile left him. And I'm not saying Askarov was a terrible player by any means, but I think we're really seeing Trotz put his stamp on this team and get rid of some of the guys that he knows that David Poile drafted don't fit in with this team. And it's not a bad thing. We can talk about the return and whether that was a good return or not, but I think Barry Trotz kind of did the best with what he could. It wasn't a great situation to begin with.
I just think, and More to Explore says this again, timing, he says timing, opportunity, talent, that's the recipe. All three have to align. Two of those three were not aligned. Personality is a red herring. I think personality is a stand-in and a cutout for not being good enough, because that's the reason Askarov is not good enough. It is not about his talent. And again, if you look at the trade, in which we're going to discuss here in a second, like, it's not even close which prospect and which piece is the best in the trade. It's Askarov. It's not even close. Like, either of the two players they got back, the first round pick is pretty solid, but of the 6 assets that were moved, Yaroslav Askarov is clearly the best asset of the group. That's not even up for debate, really. So it's not about the talent. I think you're right, Michael, and I think this is something that, and this. Let me give everybody who's listening some media insight here. This is how the sausage is made to some degree. You're going to start to see over the next 6 to 8 months lots of Askarov anecdotes leak out. It's going to happen because he's not here anymore, and people are going to now feel free and comfortable, whether it's inside the organization or Milwaukee or in the media, to start saying things a little bit looser than they would have if he was still on the franchise. Okay? So you're going to start to see some of that stuff, and it's going to come out a variety of places. And that's easy to do once a player has gone. But I think you're right that this is a guy that he didn't want from the beginning. Not because he's not good enough. Because if you are good enough, a coach and a GM thinks they can win with you, they will put up with a whole lot of shit. That's just the way sports works. It's a meritocracy. PK Subban, perfect example. If he's still helping you win, you pay him and he plays defense. If he's not, you trade him. That's it. It's about him not being productive. And right now, this team, this trade and the Saros decision and all the free agency stuff painted as clear a picture of what Barry Trotz wants to accomplish today for the Nashville Predators as anything we could have asked for. All last year, we were asking for clarity on the strategy. What direction are we going? Saros, Askarov, back and forth. This is it, guys. They're trying to win a cup in the next 4 years. You got Josi and Forsberg in their prime for the next 4 years. You got Saros in his prime for the next 4 years. You got Shea in his prime for the next 4 years. You got Stamkos and Marchessault on contracts for the next 4 years. I'm not sure what is complicated about this. I'm not saying YouTube think that. This was a decision to win today, and Askarov does not help you do that. That's it. I don't think it's any more complicated than that, to be honest with you guys. And so that's just how let's call it informed speculation. How about that? That's what I think.
I feel like the backlash for this would be so much less if the trade request didn't leak out. I think once the trade request leaked out and everyone knew, like, okay, he's giving Trotz an ultimatum, then it looked like once the trade happened a few days ago, it looked like Barry Trotz caved, gave this kid what he wanted just because he didn't want to deal with the headache. And that's not true. Like, they've been working on this for months. Like, when I tweeted out that the Sharks and the Hurricanes were two teams to watch out for, like, I was talking to somebody in the organization. They were like, yeah, San Jose's been calling about Askarov since before the draft. So it's been something that was months in the making. It didn't just happen because Askarov demanded a trade and then all of a sudden Barry Trotz caved in. So it made the optics of the situation look a lot worse.
I agree with that. Okay, that's it. There you go. All right, what did they get in return? So they gave up Nolan Burke, a 21-year-old center, the third-round pick that Colorado traded him in 2025. They get back center, 19-year-old former first-round pick, last pick of the first round in 2023, David Ekstrom. He, of course, is a center. San Jose has a lot of them in their farm system, so certainly a player they trade from a position of strength. We'll get to his breakdown. Magnus Chorna, a goaltender, a 6'6", 215-pound Swedish goaltender, and a first-round pick in 2025 that I guess could be either San Jose or Vegas. I guess it's whichever one is lower. Does that mean whichever one is better for the Preds or whichever one is worse for the Preds? I'm not sure which lower can mean multiple things in the draft. I assume whichever one is like the worst pick, I assume. So we can get into these guys, but here's what I wanted to throw out there and see what you guys think about the trade. Because on paper, it's really nice to continue to add assets and get rid of a piece that maybe isn't going to help you or that you don't see a future with. But Askarov is still clearly the best piece of the trade. So it's hard to say the Preds, quote unquote, won. It's also we're not going to know for years whether or not that's true or not. If he goes on to be, Martin Brodeur, well, okay. Bummer. But here's how I frame the trade for people that don't know anything about these guys, because it's really hard to know a lot about these players. Is this sort of like saying they traded Yaroslav Askarov, a third-round pick, and a lower tier prospect, a throw-in, for a first-round pick, Colton Sissons and Connor Ingram? Or is that too much? Is Connor Ingram too much, maybe? But it does feel like Ekstrom profiles very much as Colton Sissons. Two-way center, penalty killer, dirty puck guy, dirty area guy, not a ton of offensive skill, but a guy who helps you win, middle six forward, middle six center, first-round pick, and then, a potential flyer on a goaltending prospect. Is that the best way to put this?
I don't think it's 100% accurate, but I think it'll do for now. Like, I think that helps paint a clearer picture for fans. I don't know if Chorna will be as good as Connor Ingram in the NHL because Ingram had a really good year for Arizona, but I think that kind of puts it into a pretty nice perspective for people to kind of understand the terms of the trade.
Emma agrees completely. All right, so where what do we think of these guys? Chorna is, as you said, it feels like far more of a flyer. I think the first round draft pick, Michael, you said in the piece on Lower Broad Hockey, was the best asset they got in return. That seems true. It does feel like, and we'll get to where these guys rank in the farm system. Chorna does not factor into the top 12 or 15. Ekstrom could factor in at some point. Where that is a varying debate on the team.
But you ask one notable prospect, Guru, he's the top prospect in the system now.
Yeah, I saw that. Number one, ahead of Evangelista, Surin, Wood, Molendyke, Kemmel. I mean, that's great if that's what he is.
Also, Evangelista is not a prospect. He's a full-time NHLer. Like, what are you guys doing?
Yeah, I don't disagree with you there either.
Yeah.
You don't have to talk to the president and CEO of the Luke Evangelista fan club.
We can get into all this stuff in a little bit, and I'll tease my prospect rankings because I'm still working on the prospect guide that I have to redo now. Not all, but a couple pages.
Never ending prospect guide. All right, so what are we getting out of these two guys, and and the first round? What do you guys think of the trade in terms of value and return? It was a tough spot for Barry Trotz to be in. He probably maximized the return, but it's not. I don't know. It's hard to say that they won the quote unquote won the deal.
I think anytime, and you alluded to this earlier, but I think anytime you're dealing with a trade of prospects, it's a fool's errand to try to determine who won or who lost the trade, because you're dealing with potential. And that was the whole reason they got rid of Askarov in the first place, is you're not going to take potential over the proven commodity in Juuse Saros. So talk to me in 4, 5, 6 years. But I think, when it comes to just on paper, if you're trading Yaroslav Askarov, yes, he was arguably the top goaltending prospect in the world. You weren't going to get a Yaroslav Askarov type goaltender in return. It's not going to happen. But with him leaving, that leaves a gaping hole in Milwaukee for, the starting goaltender. So you need a goalie in the AHL. And so they needed to get a goalie as part of that return. They got that in Magnus Chorna. Is he a Askarov level talent? No. But I think, he's going to be valuable because he has experience playing in the AHL. He has experience playing in the NHL. I would like to not look into his numbers too closely, only because the team playing in front of him, specifically with the San Jose Barracuda, horrific, absolutely terrible. So I don't think it's entirely fair to judge him based on his numbers alone. But I think they needed a goalie, so they got one. And then if you're trading a first round pick in Askarov, you need to get a first round pick in return, whether that's in the form of a prospect or a future pick. And the Predators got both. They got Ekstrom and then they got a future first round pick. So now they have 3 first round picks in the 2025 draft, which can either help you build up your farm system and or it can help you at the trade deadline. If you decide that you want to go shopping and you want to add someone, that's valuable capital to have. So I think, again, we've said it already, but I think Barry Trotz did the best that he could in this situation, because I think no matter what, people, the Askarov apologists were never going to be content with whatever the return was. But I think if you look at it just kind of objectively, Barry Trotz did the best he could.
Yeah, I like parts of the return, and I don't like other parts of the return. I love the first round pick because there was questions about if you're trading Askarov, are you even going to get a first round pick if you're getting back a prospect? And the reason why I like that first round pick is because look, Vegas lost Jonathan Marchessault. They lost Chandler Stevenson. They lost their goaltender Logan Thompson. Like there's a chance. Like I still think Vegas is probably a playoff team, but there's a chance that they could have a New Jersey Devils type season this year where they have the talent to be a playoff team, but things just go wrong. And we saw this year, like Jersey picked 10th and they got Anton Salayev. The fact that they got a prospect that good and they still have the roster they do, and they're probably going to be a really good playoff team this year is just insane to me. So I think Vegas's first round pick has the potential to be closer in that top 10 range than the one they got from Tampa, and certainly than the Nashville's is going to be this year. So I like that because there's the potential of that being a high pick.
Well, hang on. Talk through what decides which pick it is. Explain that to everybody.
So the way I understand it is if Vegas's pick is higher in the draft than San Jose's,
meaning a lower number.
Yeah,
right?
so if Vegas's pick ends up being 4 and San Jose's end up being 7, San Jose can then switch and keep the 4th pick and give Nashville the 7th pick.
There you go.
Tampa Bay's first round pick is top 10 protected. So if Tampa Bay ends up in the top 10, Nashville doesn't get the pick this year. They get a first round pick in 2026.
I'm glad they spent a bunch of money in the offseason. No, San Jose will be a top 3 pick probably, right?
Yeah, for sure. There's no way Vegas is going to be worse than San Jose this year. Yeah, but there is a chance that Vegas's pick could be close to the top 10. So that's why I like that. And to Emma's point, like there's a hole in Milwaukee. You need a goaltender. Troy Grosnick also left in the offseason too. I think Matthew Murray is kind of their plan to start down there. Now you have Chorna that can go in and split some time, get some valuable minutes. Good for his development. And Chrona's in a better situation going from the dumpster fire in San Jose to the best trio of goaltending coaches with Vanderklok, Mitch Korn, and Pecorine that any goalie could possibly ask for. So I like that as well.
And the kid they drafted in 24, right? They drafted another prospect in there too. So they'll
they drafted Jacob Malata. They drafted Juha Yatkola 2 years ago. Yeah. Like they have some guys coming through, but I think Chorna is the guy that's going to be in Milwaukee. So I like those two pieces. The David Ekstrom one, to me, and again, I'm not as high on Ekstrom as I guess everybody else is. And to Emma's point, like nobody knows what these guys are going to be. Barry Trotz even said on the radio the other day, he's like, well, what if Ekstrom is the star and Askarov flames out? Like, then what? Then how much better does this trade look for us? And totally. That's entirely true. That could very well happen. But I think if we're going with a Colton Sissons player comp for Ekstrom, to me, that's a little underwhelming for the caliber of prospect you just traded. But if that first round pick hits, or that first round pick is used to acquire someone else, then I can't really complain about it. I personally, if I was Barry Trotz, I would have wanted either Thomas Bordeleau or Philip Bysted back. Bysted to me was the guy that they should have asked for, because he's a strong two-way center. He's got great playmaking ability. He shoots the puck all over the ice. The offensive upside is higher with Bysted. I would have rather had him than Ekstrom. And I also like Bordeleau because the guy is fast. He's got speed to burn. He's got a high hockey IQ. He's always looking to pass. He has the potential to be a top 6 playmaker. I would have rather had one of those other centers than Ekstrom. But again, if the first round pick is used to acquire someone, or you draft someone great with that pick, then I guess you can't really complain too much about it, because Ekstrom, worst case scenario is he's going to be a solid bottom 6 player. I have seen some guys say that he could possibly be a top 6 guy. I think Corey Pronman said he could be a second line center in the NHL. So if that happens, then I guess, you know what, it was a good trade.
I do think second line center is probably best case scenario, which would make him, according to Max, he'll be like Colton Sissons with better offensive upside. That would be a second line center. If you end up with just Colton Sissons, which is far more likely, and everything you read about this kid it just screams Colton Sissons. It's like every single bullet point, you're like Colton Sissons, Colton Sissons, Colton Sissons, Colton Sissons. And if another one of those guys for 8 years on your roster, that you got to have those guys, man. Colton Sissons, you guys know me. It's Evangelista and Sissons. I'm the president of those fan clubs, and I think you have to have those types of players.
Did Sissons take Alex Carrier's spot in your man crush?
No, Carrier's never been.
You were obsessed with Carrier like 2 years ago.
Yeah, it was a long time ago. I've never, I don't send late night text messages to Alex Carrier. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I think what's interesting is where I think the general way to look at a prospect is to sort of generally slot them into a range in the farm system. And if you're going to include Evangelista in this, because I guess that's technically where he belongs. I don't know, but just in theory, the top tier for me personally, and this is just my personal rankings, would be some combination in some order of Evangelista, Molendijk, Surin, and Kemmel. Those would probably be the 4 that I would put like on a top tier in the farm system. I think Wood, Gibson, Svechkov, Stiga, LaRue, they're on another tier, just slightly below that top tier.
Can we take Evangelista out of that? Because he's a full-time NHLer. He's not a prospect.
I agree. I'm just saying that using him as an example, and if you're still counting, I don't disagree with you. Like, I don't know why Parsonen and Tomasino don't count more as prospects than Evangelista. But again, point is they're top. That's a top tier for me. Let's just go Molendijk, Surin, and Kemmel maybe, if that's what you want to say. I don't know about Matthew Wood. He's the guy I kind of waffle on whether or not I think he's a top tier prospect or a second tier guy. But second tier guys, you have to have lots of good second tier guys to win cups too. So I think Ekstrom slots into that second tier group. Very, very solid player. First round pick for a reason. Some upside as a winner, and unfortunately, looks like a Nashville Predator mold. Like that's the way Predators. We were talking about things that Barry Trotz likes. If you're going to go back to the old Predator way, this kind of scouting report on a player screams Nashville Predators. So 6'3", 19 years old, first round pick, two-way player, great passer, likes to play in the dirty areas. Sounds a lot like Colton Sissons to me. So again, is that a top tier number 1, 2, or 3 guy in your system? Probably not. Is he in that second tier somewhere, give or take some slots? Probably so. And getting a first round pick, and this is really ultimately what's interesting here, and this is what Josh says, and I think we should consider this. What does 3 first round picks buy you nowadays in the NHL? And I think that's ultimately the question here is, do you want to stock the farm system with 3 guys, first round talents? You can do that next year, and 2 more in the second round. If you want to move them at the trade deadline to go acquire a big piece, you could do that. If you want to trade all 3 to move up in the first round next year to get one singular piece that you love, you can do that. He now has a bunch of flexibility with what he wants to do with those 5 draft picks. So we can say Askarov was the best player in the group, and maybe you can
pull a Doug Armstrong and offer sheet somebody next year.
Right.
I mean, Mason McTavish, Alexis Lafreniere, Connor Zary, Thomas Bordeleau, Noah Dobson, Evan Bouchard, Keandre Miller. There's a lot of really great players that would be offer sheet candidates next year.
Pull a Doug Armstrong, just offer sheet all of them.
Yeah.
See what sticks, and maybe you end up with all of them.
You do have 5 picks to give away. You could just like offer sheet 5 dudes. I don't know how they do that from a salary cap or roster standpoint, but you never know. Either way, he's got a ton of flexibility. Again, we're not going to know in any time in the next, unless Askarov goes out there and is just incredibly like just insanely good in year one for San Jose on a bad team that's not going to give them a lot of support offensively or defensively.
Have you seen that Sharks defense? Ooh.
No, dude, it's not good. And all their best players are in the minors. So like, you know,
3 years from now, though, I mean, watch out.
This is ultimately what you have to prepare for. Is there a chance that Yaroslav Askarov in like 3 to 4 years is better than Juuse Saros? Yes, there's a chance. And it might even be a decent chance. But he's not right now. And that is ultimately what Barry Trotz was trying to accomplish.
In 3 or 4 years, it's not going to matter if he's better. If the Predators win a cup in the Steven Stamkos window, which we've all given them, it doesn't matter if Askarov is better than Saros in 4 years.
Well, okay, let me ask you guys this. Because what's the most likeliest thing to happen? Like winning a cup is the goal. That's what they're working towards, but is extremely difficult and unlikely. So trying to be reasonable and set reasonable expectations, what would call this decision and this strategy successful? We've talked about it before. Make a couple of deep playoff runs. Give the fans a chance at winning a championship. I think that is how you measure success. A couple of Western Conference finals over the next 5 years. I think then all this strategy was the right thing to do. You get to one Western Conference final, I might even consider this strategy the right thing to do, because that's a lot of really good regular season hockey and a lot of really good entertaining playoff hockey and a lot of memories for a lot of fans. Maybe I'm soft in my middle-agedness now, but that's the goal is the cup. But like, you also have to take a step back from that and say, how do we define success? Askarov winning 3 Vezinas is like the Preds winning a Stanley Cup, right? Like those are like perfect elite outcomes that you're shooting for, but very unlikely for both, right?
I agree.
Sorry to pour a bucket of cold water on all your championship hopes, guys. Sorry. Okay, what about the farm system here? Where do you guys think Ekstrom ranks, and what do you think of the farm system now in general? I know one particular service, The Athletic, moved him down from 16th to 17th in their prospect farm system rankings. We're about to have rookies report on September 10th, I believe, in 2 weeks, following the Labor Day holiday. So what do we make of the job that Trotz has done in the farm system? They got a ton of first-round picks in there, ton of second-round picks. There's not a lot of guys in there that people are calling the next so-and-so. So what are y'all general thoughts on the farm system right now?
Going with what The Athletic put out, we could spend a whole podcast me just ripping these rankings here, but David Ekstrom is not the Predators' top prospect. I'm sorry. Luke Evangelista, who they have ranked number 2, is not even a prospect. And then their third best prospect is Igor Surin, who most scouting agencies like had as a second round pick. So there's a lot I could just pick apart here. I agree with you. Matthew Wood is a tremendous wild card. I do think if he hits, Matthew Wood has upside to be a really great NHL player, but you got to get the skating under control. You got to figure out a few other things. You have to give the kid a position. There's a lot of things to work with. The upside is there. I see that. I don't know. It worries me a little bit. I would argue with Askarov being gone, because there was no argument. He was clearly their top prospect. With Askarov being gone, I would. There's a case I think you can make that Tanner Molendyk is the best prospect in this organization now. I think you could seriously argue that. I'm trying to decide.
I'll do it for you right now. You want me to?
In my prospect rankings that I'm doing, I'm trying to decide whether Molendyk or Kemmel should be the number 1 prospect for the team. It's like splitting hairs. I also think
you know where I vote.
Yeah, I also think
you're
too.
Not asking, but
I also think too, going back and looking at kind of the Athletic prospect rankings, the fact that they have Austin Roost, however you say that, as the number 10 guy. They don't even have Teddy Stiga in the top 10. They have Reed Schaefer ranked ahead of Zach Leroux. I mean, there's so much wrong with all that. And what that tells me is that particular writer hasn't watched a lot of these guys play. He's basing a lot of this off of the draft year that they came out. And I think he's probably looking at a lot of box scores trying to determine where to rank them. I'm not saying that I'm better than this particular writer, but I feel like I'm a little bit more informed when it comes to these specific guys. So I think moving them down to 17th or wherever they had them, I think was a little premature, because I still think, look, they don't have the top end guy with Askarov, but they have a lot more depth. They filled a lot more positions. We were talking last year at the same time how they didn't, other than maybe Molendyk could be the guy, but they didn't have anybody on the defense that really would excite anybody. Now you got Molendyk, Now you got Andrew Gibson. Ryan Ufko had a really kind of came on strong in the AHL at the end of the year. So you have 3 defensive prospects that I think are top 10 worthy. I like Surin. I think he's just a little bit of a wild card. I actually have Stiga ranked ahead of Surin. I think Stiga could be the number 1 center prospect for this team. I'm really high on Svechkov as well. So I think there's a lot of good depth. And it's just kind of, do they have any Macklin Celebrini type stars? No. But if a lot of these guys pan out in the NHL, like I think we could look at the guys they have in this farm system and be like, you know what? They did a good job drafting these guys.
Emma, you got any farm system thoughts here? Doesn't sound like you do.
No, I think you got, I mean, even just kind of more generally, if you look at last year in Milwaukee, you know, there was so much hype leading into the season about how, I forget how many first round picks did they have playing in Milwaukee last year? And
like 5 or 6.
Yeah, I was gonna say
yeah. And some of them, like Zach LaRue, obviously like had a great year. Kemmel kind of underperformed. Reed Schaefer underperformed. Like there was a lot of kind of, you know, not to say that they were bad, they were a bad team or anything, but I think it just kind of goes to show that it's very difficult to kind of project where these guys are going to be, and they're all going to be on sort of different timelines when it comes to their development. So yeah, I think that it's on paper, yes, they have a ton of depth, but we'll see.
They'll have 9 first-round picks in Milwaukee this year.
It's insane.
I'm counting Ozzy Weisblatt in there because he was the first-round pick.
And honestly, if you want to start using context, there's a lot of names like Gibson that almost count, right? Like another high-level, top-tier draft pick. What's interesting is it's hard to argue that they got better. In the farm system in general, like you get rid of Askarov, it's hard to say that the group is better if the number 1 guy is gone, just as a point of fact. But, and this is why I'm very curious to see what he does with all this draft capital, because I don't think like they've done the quantity thing. Like Barry Trotz has done the quantity thing. He acquired all the picks. He's drafted a bunch of guys. He's low, like you said, 9 first-round picks. He's got the quantity. He needs to go get an elite player. There needs to be an elite prospect. And if that's 3 picks or 4 picks or 5 picks or prospects and picks or whatever, I don't know what that looks like. Maybe it's an already established NHL player who's young at the deadline you trade 2 first-round picks for. I don't know, but they've got the quantity. They don't have the quality yet. They still need some of that. And so 1 or 2 of those pieces is what you want to see. You got 5 picks in the top 70. You got to go make it happen at some point. I don't know what that looks like. I don't know how he's going to do it, but he's got to.
I feel like next year is the year, considering he's got 3 first-round picks, 2 second-round picks. I think next year is the year Trotz. It's more likely that it's more probable that he pulls off a trade in the first round and gets up. I'm not saying he's going to get into the top 5, top 10, but I think it's more likely next year is the year he does it because he wants those elite players. I mean, I was jumping up and down. I was like, Zeev Buium is falling. I would have traded to get up to go and get him. I mean, and you just let the Minnesota Wild go and get arguably the best defenseman in this class. And that like, I would have moved up for him this year. I wouldn't have even worried about everybody else. But I think next year, if next year's top 15 is as top loaded as this year's was, and some guys start falling, I think next year's the year Trotz pulls off a trade and goes and gets one of those guys.
And again, to go back to just kind of point out that the quantity thing is a good thing, because I would argue if Matthew Wood is your 5th or 6th best prospect, Gibson is 6 or 7, and Svechkov is 7 or 8, and Zach LaRue and Teddy Stiga are 8 and 9. That's a deeper collection of forwards than they've ever had. But again, doesn't mean there's a premier elite number 1 guy in that group. But that is a much deeper group, 1 to 12, let's say, than you've ever had in Milwaukee. Do I think they're 17th in the league because of this one thing? It was one guy on this one website? No. Do I think they're top 5 or top 8? No. Do I think they got worse? Yes. It doesn't mean it can still build a winner? Absolutely. So especially with 5 picks coming up at the deadline and in the draft. So
I think considering all the prospect pools across the NHL, I think 13, 14, 12, maybe 12 to 14 range is where I would put them. I think going down to 17 was a little too harsh just because of one player got traded.
Upper half for sure. All right. Rookies are reporting. A lot of these guys are going to report. They've got a bunch of games that they're going to play in the rookie development tournaments that they do all the time coming up. Again, I think September 10th, I believe, or 11th, one of those 2 days, 2 weeks, 2 Mondays, 2 Tuesdays from today. at time of recording. Again, we'll have some announcements for you next week on the show. Make sure you sign up, lowerbroadhockey.com. Go to that website, sign up. We're going to have some announcements coming there as well, so stay tuned for that. What are we looking forward to with the rookies? Is it too early to talk about rookies? Do we have to get through the vacation? Do we have to get through Labor Day before we can talk about rookies? Or are we actually like, I do think through all of this, and there's a lot of talk about, there's a lot of hand-wringing about the handling of all of this in general. A lot of Monday morning quarterbacking. I do think Predators fans should be very excited. Like, there's a lot to be excited about with this franchise and training camp opening in 2 weeks. People should be excited about this team.
Yeah. And I think, I think the way I look at it is like the release of the rookie camp rosters. Like, that's the first step that hockey's coming, because rookie camp leads right into rookie tournament, which leads right into training camp. So like, that's the first step. It means hockey's almost back and there's a lot to be excited about. And I think that, if we're talking about rookies specifically, because that roster did come out yesterday, the camp begins September 11th, and then they have the tournament with the prospects from Carolina, Tampa, and Florida that runs from the 13th to the 16th, and the Preds are hosting it this year. I think, it'll be interesting to see. Obviously, we just talked about how many first-round picks are going to be there, but then on top of that, a lot of these guys you'll get to see for the first time, like with the Predators in a game situation as part of the tournament. You have some guys who've been to dev camp already, but they haven't really, they've only played intra-squad games, and they haven't, we haven't really seen what they can do against other teams. So you have guys like Jeremy Hansel, Andrew Gibson, Magnus Chorna will be there. So I think that it's like the first kind of chance to actually see a lot of these guys that are either new to the organization or maybe new to this kind of level with the organization. So I personally am looking forward to it.
Yeah, I don't think it's ever too early to start talking about rookies, especially in the summer, because what else do we have to talk about? I think there's a lot of players that are intriguing that I think Preds fans are definitely interested in. I mean, I'll probably do a headlines to watch, players to watch, whatever at rookie camp for the website. But I mean, I want to see Joakim Kemmel. I want to see how he looks compared to how he played last season, because I still don't think. I think he made strides in his development, but I think the best is yet to come for him. I still believe he's got a lot more growing to do this season. Like Emma said, Jeremy Hansel, I'm curious to see how he looks. Like he was pretty impressive in development camp. The same with Andrew Gibson. I want to see Ryan Ufko. I want to see if he kind of fits the image I had in my head of what I saw when he was in the AHL. And I also think like seeing guys like Magnus Chorna, seeing how he looks, what he could possibly do. Like there's a lot of players that I think are really intriguing. And also, I mean, we have to take into account too, Zachary Leroux very much could win a spot on the opening night roster. I think this is a big camp to watch for him to see what he can do. I'm not saying he's going to, but I'm saying
that in there 49 minutes. I like that.
Yeah, I'm not saying Leroux is a lock for the roster, but he, from what I've heard, he is very much being considered for a roster spot. So I think that's something to watch as well. And then, I mean, Ozzy Weisblatt, like saw him a little bit in Milwaukee when he came over, and then the Igor Afanasyev trade happened. Like he's someone who can maybe earn a call up in the middle or the end of the season if there's an injury. Like he's a very scrappy kind of player, like kind of fits what they're looking for. So there's a lot of players that are intriguing, a lot of guys that I'm curious to see how they look compared to where they were at the rookie showcase last year.
Yeah, I will just add on to that. You brought up Kemmel, and I think that that's a good one to watch. I traveled with the team for the rookie tournament last year when it was in Florida. Kemmel had a hell of a tournament last year. That was kind of what, I mean, obviously we were all excited about him beforehand, first round pick, that slap shot that I could watch for days. But like, I think it was that tournament that made kind of opened my eyes to him, like, whoa, like this kid's really good. And then he kind of, not to say he fell off in Milwaukee, but it's like you're reminded that, oh, it's a long season. Yeah. There's a lot of adjustment that needs to happen. So I think I agree, just to kind of piggyback on that. I think that it'll be interesting to see where he's at this year versus last year.
Yeah, I mean, it's slow development for sure. You got to do it over the course of a long season. All right.
He was also one of the youngest guys on the Admirals roster too. So I think you have to take into account. I think he was 19 when the season started. So he's still very young and kind of learning the ropes.
So,
and again, you can't put too much stock into rookie tournament performance alone, because Luke Evangelista was part of the rookie tournament roster last year, and he didn't really do that well. So
and he's not a part of the rookie tournament this year, even though he's in the farm system.
Yeah, no,
apparently?
He's a rookie. Yeah, he's
Okay,
definitely a rookie.
Yeah. So we're going to try to set records in Nashville today and tomorrow, Wednesday and Thursday, with the heat index over 100 degrees. All my daughter's practices have been canceled for like 2 straight days. So it sounds like Zachary Leroux competing and winning a roster spot is about as hot a prospect take as you can get 2 weeks before development tournament start and training camp start. Do either of you have any more spicy 103-degree rookie takes you'd like to add? It sounds like you're high on Kemmel. No surprise there. Mine might, for example,
I'm high on him. I don't think he's making the Preds roster out of camp, but I
think the only one on this roster that has a shot at, only one on the rookie roster that has a shot at making the NHL roster this year, barring an injury call up out of necessity, is Leroux.
Interesting. Okay. My as spicy as I'll get is like, I think you could leave this period of time with Molendyke established as the number 1 prospect in the farm system and Gibson moving up boards quickly up into that top tier. I think those 2 guys they think very highly of, and I think both of those guys. I really like Surin as well. I know you mentioned that they kind of reached for him a little bit, but I like his game. I like how he plays an adult style of hockey already for a young player, and I think that's going to suit him well. He'll move up the ranks because when you can play – like the other stuff can come to your game if you already are comfortable on the ice in your own physicality and skin. And I think that's a big step for him. So yeah,
most players have the skill and they have to be taught how to hit. He already knows how to hit. He just has to be taught the skill.
Yeah. And again, you don't necessarily, he's not, I don't know if he projects as like a top line center. He's going to score 75 or 80 points. That's not what you drafted him for. Right. So, all right, we'll see. It's going to be a lot of fun though. Preds fans should be very excited. This is a very exciting time of year for a program, for a franchise that is trying to win. And ultimately, all of this drama of the last couple of months and frankly, the last 18 months, the last 2 deadlines and the last 2 drafts and all the stuff, like it's all built to a place where this is a team that has a chance to be competing for a Central Division championship. They're, certainly competing for a 2 or a 3 seed at minimum. And they've got pieces in place to go on a deep run. And that's the goal. All your goal is as a general manager is to set yourself up for a chance. That's the goal, and that's clearly what Barry Trotz has done. Is it going to work? Who knows? We'll see. That's why we play the games. That's why we are fans of sports in general. Emma, where can the good people find you?
You can find me on the social media sewers at Emma_Lingan, and you can find my work at the Hockey News and every Friday at Lower Broad Hockey, covering the NHL at large.
My turn.
Yeah, man.
You can find me on Twitter at MGSports_. I might reactivate my Threads account and be active on there. I'm trying to set up my Blue Sky profile, so maybe I'll do some stuff on there. And you can read my work at Lower Broad Hockey.
I want to like Blue Sky. I really do. Like it is like a more comfortable version. It's like an old sweater version of Twitter, but it's just I can't give up the drug of choice. I'm still on the damn Twitter sewers. I just can't give it up. It's very, I don't know what to do. Help me, people. Help me. At Braden Gall, at 440 Sports, Lower Broad Hockey, Lower Broad Pucks on all the socials, but lowerbroadhockey.com is really what matters. And of course, we'll have some stuff coming for you as training camp opens. And again, next week on the show, we'll have an announcement. So make sure you stay tuned. We're going to try to do these Wednesday mornings live every single week for you. So we'll try to keep that scheduled routine for you. So stay tuned for that. Otherwise, very exciting time. And everyone should be super fired up about it. So again, I've said this before on the show, but anecdotally, the more people have come up to me and without being prompted have said, man, like, hey, what about these Preds this year? Like, that's just happening with casual fans more than Titans games, more than anybody else in the market. That is, people are interested in this team. And so I think it's going to be a very fun year. All right. Anything else you guys want to add? You want to throw out there to the good folks? Is that good? Are we good?
Good.
All right. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Emma. Enjoy the Labor Day holiday, everybody. We'll be back next Wednesday. Rate, review, subscribe, share the show with somebody. That's how we grow these things. Tell somebody about the product. Tell somebody about the show. Tell somebody about Lower Broad Hockey. We'd really appreciate you guys doing that for us as well. For Michael and Emma, I am Braden Gall. Thank you for listening. Have a great weekend. We will talk to you next week.